WisdomTree head of digital assets, Will Peck, is joining us at the desk. Hello.
Hey, Jen, how are you? Hey, Andy.
Good. Hey. Andy tried to run away from you just now.
Andy,
I know.
come on.
I don't know why Andy did that. All right. Andy and I were talking at the beginning of the show about how this event really kind of is an example of the TradFi world really starting to connect with the crypto DeFi world, something that we haven't really seen a lot of in the past. Talk to me about that convergence in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, this is a fantastic event, fantastic venue. Thank you very much to the Ondo team for putting it on. I think that's exactly right. You know, we've done a lot of, I referred to this on the panel I did earlier today. I've been going to tokenization events for, 5-6 years now. This is probably one of the nicest venues for them, but I think also the ethos here of not trying to run away from like crypto and DeFi, but understanding that a lot of what you're doing with tokenization is trying to build products and services for people who get value from crypto and DeFi, which is a different shift from where it might have been in the past, where you had a lot of big banks saying, oh, I'm going to build this big private blockchain that's going to do all this stuff and everything, which was actually kind of, to me, almost like anathema to like crypto and like the stuff you get with public permissionless blockchains. So I do think this conference and really the industry has been more welcoming of crypto, not to say all parts of crypto, but certainly public blockchains, which is, I think, where the value is going to come from tokenization.
WisdomTree has always staked out the unknown, right, and provided trust. So people, when they think of WisdomTree, they're going to think of something, maybe I don't quite understand this, but I know these people are going to help me get there. Digital assets have been no exception, but still, there's still a divide when people are thinking about digital assets between access to something like Bitcoin and tokenizing another asset. And how should your customers think about those two product lines? How do your salespeople think about those two product lines and reconciling them? Because they're kind of new wine in an old glass and old wine in a new glass,
exactly.
Right?
I think that's a great point. And first of all, thank you for the compliment on WisdomTree. We take pride in that. We always want to do right by our customers. And WisdomTree's history, going back to being one of the original ETF firms, has kind of been that building that trust with your customers is a big part of it. So I think they're two very different sales, frankly, to two very different audiences, right? So our sales force in the United States, for example, is focused on, amongst all of the other products that we have, Bitcoin, BTCW, our Bitcoin ETP. For that's just answering questions around like, how does this fit in a portfolio? How does the product work, et cetera, for our traditional client set, being financial advisors, at the big wirehouses or independent firms, for example. The tokenization side, going back to the first point, is different. I think this is serving a different audience of people, some of whom are in the United States, some offshore, of saying, hey, for whatever reason, I want to be on chain, right? I want to hold my US dollars in stable coins, for example, but I want things like yield, or I might want access to the US equity markets or stuff like that, still within that same infrastructure with the same trading mechanisms that I have in DeFi. And that's who we want to serve there. So it is a very different, like our sales force is not selling these tokenized products. It's really about, selling into this new audience of people who want to be on chain for their own reasons.
For a long time, Will, it felt like there was almost this resistance from traditional financial firms when it came to the adoption of the things that we're talking about today. And all of a sudden, it seems like that's shifted. And it no longer takes a long time to make things happen in these big institutions. And I'd love to juxtapose that against what's happening on the regulatory front in the U.S. What do you think changed and shifted to kind of accelerate all the innovation we're talking about here today?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the career risk of wanting to do stuff in this space within a firm has certainly gone down. I think it was hard, especially for banks with kind of a very strict federal banking regulators at different level for wanting to engage in the space, even if it wasn't at various levels, right? And you could say the same thing for asset management, broker-dealers with the SEC. So obviously, there was an election recently. I don't know if you heard. But I think either way, we would have seen change in D.C. at the federal level. But certainly with the Trump administration, very pro-innovation for fintech broadly and crypto specifically. And I think the things that you're seeing there is a tone shift in this, certainly with the SEC having new task force, et cetera. Now, this stuff will still take time. Like, I don't think these things happen overnight. So I think some people might be a little bit too bullish on like this changing tomorrow. But I sense a definite shift in tone in the regulatory environment, which is going to allow big financial institutions to do more in the space and hopefully offer products to customers that are better for customers, right? That's what we're ultimately trying to do.
ETFs are only a, 26, 27, maybe 30-year-old instrument which revolutionized a lot of finance. They started as an instrument of liquidity, of tax efficiency, of trading efficiency. I certainly remember the old days of Qs and spiders kind of lighting things up, and then WisdomTree coming up and opening up. Is the ETF wrap, it feels like it's almost getting a little stretched too far in different directions, different regulators, 19b4s, filings. Is it time to update the ETF structure in such a way that it can do more things since it's so well adopted?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you've seen some of that. When I've been at WisdomTree for 10 years, and a lot more ETF products required a 19b4 at the time, which was kind of outside of generic listing standards. And that's changed. There's been a bit more generic rules, right? And I think the rules in place for ETFs have developed, but even things like, with the Bitcoin ETFs, unable to do in-kind creation redemption, right? So like something that most people on the street would not appreciate at all, but the sponsors, the market makers acknowledge that this would make a better product. So I think there's some of that you're going to see coming forward. I don't know. I think there's still trillions to come in ETFs. Like, I don't see that structure in terms of, I have a brokerage account, I want to get access to the US equity market. The ETF is going to continue to be the best way to do that. What I see happening over time with tokenization is saying, hey, there's other people who don't have a brokerage account, don't want to have a brokerage account, have a wallet, for whatever reasons. Like I said, they like the instant control of their money, self-custodial solutions that being on-chain provides to them. And I think those people deserve good products too. I think those products should be transparent, tax efficient, have the same liquidity and standardization that the ETF has brought to things in brokerage accounts. So for me, that's how I see that developing. I don't think the ETF is going away anytime soon in that regard.
Do you think we're going to see other crypto ETFs this year, maybe an XRP or a SOL?
Yeah, I can't comment on any specific WisdomTree filings, of course, but certainly there seems to be a more welcoming attitude generally towards crypto assets. And I expect you to see more development there. Certainly we've seen just a ton of industry filings. That's not a surprise. ETFs are an incredibly competitive industry. People always want to get a leg up by launching a new product or something like that. I do think there's going to continue to be, particularly in the US, a framework around this, and not everything's going to come to the market immediately, any token that gets launched, right? There's liquidity and other standards that you need to have for it. But I would expect to see more kind of innovation on like what tokens can be wrapped in an ETF, but also, like I said earlier, what ETFs, the functionality that they have, right? So in-kind creation redemption, that's a big thing for the market. Staking is going to be a big thing for proof-of-stake coins as well. So I suspect you're going to see more of that in the U.S., which is frankly where the European market is today.
I think that tokenizing things like treasuries for offshore consumption, is a toe in the water. But if you think about what the ETF wrapper can do to bring other tokenized things into U.S. investors' portfolio, that must be in your mind somewhere, right, for the future?
Yeah, I think you can get lots of creative ideas in terms of accessing, if DeFi or other things are creating real sustainable yields or investment opportunities, like the U.S. retail investor, provided it meets all the standards, should ideally be able to get access to those, right? So I do see more stuff like that coming. I think, there's a lot of kind of junk out there too, and you want to be careful not to do that. But I do think that's going to be something that happens in the future.
Will, thanks so much for joining us here, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.